what's up? Hello, my name is Emma, and today I am going to be sharing with you guys my final book haul of 2019. I thought I was doing pretty good with book buying for most of 2019 because I bought significantly less than I have than like any year since starting BookTube, but I guess as the year came to a close, the book lover in me was just like, honey, we gotta make up for all this lost time. I bought about half of these books and the other half are mostly from publishers, but I think I have a pretty wide range to share with you guys. I have young adult, nonfiction, I have some new releases and some older books, some books I've read and some that I'm excited to get to, so I hope you guys enjoy the video. First up, I have Ninth House by Libri, and this is the gorgeous Waterstones exclusive edition. It is signed by Libri and actually has some extra content from this story, but I actually read Ninth House already and it was one of my favorite books of the year. This is the first installment in a new adult fantasy series and it takes place at Yale University following the magical secret societies on campus. Our main character is named Alex Stern, who comes from a really difficult home life, but she is recruited by one of the societies because she has the unique ability to see ghosts. I absolutely adored Ninth House. I knew I was going to love it because I'm a big fan of Libri, but it really exceeded my expectations. It really is a dark and gruesome story, not one for the faint of heart, but it was super atmospheric and the characters were so lovable. I just could not put this down from the moment I picked it up. I will talk more about it in my end of year wrap up, but this is definitely a book I can see myself reading multiple times in the future because the second I finished, I just wanted to start all over again. Next up, I have Wayward Son by Rainbow Rowell, which was sent to me by Book of the Month YA. Wayward Son is the sequel to Carry On, which is all about a boy named Simon Snow who attends a school for magic, and this installment follows him at his final year at the Watford school when his arch nemesis slash roommate does not show up. By the way, it's gay. I forgot to say that before. I read Carry On a few years ago when it came out, and I did enjoy it. I didn't feel the love for it that some other booktubers have, but it was an enjoyable story and one I was always interested in continuing with. I honestly don't know a thing about Wayward Son, and I have seen some mixed reviews, so I'm not really sure how to feel about it yet, but I am interested in giving it a shot. The next book I bought is The Beautiful by Renee Atiya. This is a paranormal historical fiction novel set in 1872 New Orleans about a girl named Celine who has fled Paris after her troubled past there in order to join a convent. But when Celine arrives, girls from the convent are being murdered and she starts to suspect that it might have something to do with the leader of one of the main underground societies in New Orleans, whom she also has taken a fancy to. I read The Beautiful and I really loved it. The number one thing that stands out to me about this book is that the writing is just so freaking gorgeous. And it also made me very nostalgic for all of the like old school YA paranormal stories that I used to love. The one thing I didn't really like about this book is that it was pitched as being like the book to bring back vampires in YA, which is like a very bold claim to make, and it did not follow through because the vampires were not present like at all throughout the book. My assumption is that they're going to delve more into it in book 2 because it is a series, but I was just expecting more from that element with The Beautiful. It was like this close to making it to my favorites of the year list, but I thoroughly enjoyed my time reading it and I cannot wait to pick up book 2. Next up, I have one of my most anticipated books of the year, and that is Supernova by Marissa Meyer, which is the third and final book in the Renegades trilogy. If you're a Renegades fan like myself and would like to hear more of my thoughts on Supernova, I will link my spoiler-free reading vlog in the description below and you can watch my entire experience reading it. Now, I really hyped Supernova up in my head because Renegades and Arch Enemies were incredible. They were my #1 top favorite spot of last year, but unfortunately, Supernova did not follow through for me. I gave it like 3.5 or 4 stars. The fact that I like did not love everything about this book was really shocking to me and therefore disappointing. There was a lot I loved about this book, but overall, the direction of the plot and some of the characters just didn't fulfill me the way I feel the conclusion should. The next book I bought in November is a bit of a wild card for me, and that is Astro Poets: Your Guide to the Zodiac by Alex Dimitrov and Dorothea Lasky. If you haven't picked up on it, this is a book about astrology. It is essentially like a beginner's guide written by 2 people who run a very well-known astrological Twitter account called Astro Poets. I was first drawn to this book because of its very striking cover, but I have been getting way more into astrology in the past couple of months, so I thought it would be good to pick up like a beginner's guide that was written in an easy to understand format. There's so much information out there about the zodiac, and that's very overwhelming for someone like me who is only just starting starting to really dip their toes into it. So because I was a fan of Astro Poets already and I like was flipping through it and it seemed like the type of book that I would really vibe with, so I decided to pick it up. I told myself I was gonna read like a few pages of it every day, and that just hasn't been happening lately, but I'm like 50 pages into it now and have thoroughly enjoyed what I've read. I've learned so much already and I'm really excited to broaden my knowledge of the subject. Next up, I have a graphic novel, and that is My Lesbian Experience with Loneliness by Nagata Kabi. This book was actually recommended to me years ago when I was interning for the National Eating Disorders Association. My supervisor had told me that she really loved it, and I sort of always kept it on my radar and I would look at it in bookstores, but I never really picked it up because I'm not a big graphic novel reader. But I did pick up some graphic novels recently and I was like, I should get more. All I know about this book is it is a memoir about a girl's true experience with depression and her own sexuality, so I'm very intrigued to read it. There's like a lot of subjects I'm interested in and I think I'll be able to relate to, and it seems like it's gonna be a great read for me. Now I have a mini Cassandra Clare haul, as I almost always do. First up is the Clockwork Angel 10th Anniversary Edition. This matches the City of Bones 10th Anniversary Edition, but it has different details that correlate with this story, and I'm just really excited to add it to my collection. It has some gorgeous artwork of Tessa and Will on the end pages, and although like I've read this story 4 times and it's nothing new to me, you know that I love collecting Cassandra Clare books. Obviously, as there's like 80 of them right there for ya. There's more pictures in here, which I feel like I did look at before, but we can look at them again because the artwork is just so stunning. I'm obsessed with Cassandra Jean and Cassandra Clare collaborations. Speaking of Cassandra Jean, who is the illustrator for all of those gorgeous portraits we just saw, I have the 3rd installment in the Mortal Instruments graphic novels. Now, a lot of people are unsure how these graphic novels work because they're not labeled all that well and they've been coming out a little sporadically, but the first 2 installments are part 1 and part 2 of City of Bones, and this is the first part of City of Ashes. Though I have just barely flipped through these books, I really would love to read the entire series in its graphic novel format once they're all released. I have so many different visions of what the Mortal Instruments looks like, from the movie adaptation to the television series, and everything that I personally see in my head when I read the books, so I think it would be really cool to see some of those scenes and characters through a different person's eye. And the last Cassie Clare book I have on this haul is Queen of Air and Darkness, the final book in the Dark Artifices series, and this was sent to me by Simon Teen. This is the new paperback edition, which if you haven't seen, when you put it together with the other ones, it makes a gorgeous illustration from the books. I live for box sets that have illustrated spines that make a picture. I just think it is always such an awesome collector's item for super big fans of this series, so I'm very happy to have the completed set. Next up, I have a memoir that I listened to on audiobook earlier this year and was really excited to finally get a copy of, and that is Becoming by Michelle Obama. This is, of course, the memoir of the ever-incredible First Lady Michelle Obama. She basically tells her life story up until this point, from being a young girl on the south side of Chicago to a young woman studying at Princeton to meeting the love of her life and becoming the First Lady of the United States. I loved this book so much. If you're looking for an uplifting, empowering, inspiring memoir, this is the book you gotta read. Especially if you listen to the audiobook, it's like being told stories by a friend, and I just never realized how little I truly knew about Michelle Obama as a person until I heard her story in her own words. It really left a lasting impression on me, and I'd highly recommend it. I have 2 other graphic novels that I bought, the first being Heartstopper Volume 2 by Alice Oseman. I buddy read the first installment a few months ago with my friend Red from Little Red Reader, and we just had an absolute blast binging this super cute gay love story that I almost immediately ordered Volume 2, and we read that together as well. Red is one of my oldest booktube friends, and it was just so much fun to dive into this story with her, especially one that is just so lighthearted and cute and fluffy. This book follows a gay drummer named Charlie and a rugby player named Nick who go to the same boys' school but are obviously in very different circles, but they become friends and realize they might start to have feelings for each other as well. I binged both installments in like 2 sittings each. They are the best quick reads out there if you're looking for something that's lighthearted and gonna get you in a great reading mood. Heartstopper is perfect, and I'm happy to say I liked Volume 2 even more than I liked Volume 1, and Volume 3 comes out this February, so I'm just really excited to continue with the series and super happy that Red convinced me to buddy read it with her because I probably wouldn't have picked it up if she hadn't. And the other graphic novel I have is Laura Dean Keeps Breaking Up With Me by Mariko Tamaki and Rosemary Valero O'Connell. Gotta be honest, I don't know much about this book either. I just knew it was queer and it was a graphic novel, and like I had just finished reading Heartstopper, so it seemed like a good fit. All I can gather is it's about a girl named Freddie who is trying to navigate the very confusing time of high school while her pretty, perfect, popular girlfriend keeps breaking up with her but coming back in the end. I've seen some people talking about this book. It seems like another cute read and I think I'm going to really enjoy it. Next I have The How and the Why by Cynthia Hand, which was sent to me by HarperCollins. Cynthia Hand is the author of The Afterlife of Holly Chase, which you guys know if you've been watching my videos for the last like 3 years that it's one of my absolute favorites. This one could not be farther from a paranormal Christmas Carol retelling though, as it follows a girl and her navigating her life being adopted. Cass is lucky to have wonderful parents and a lovely home life, but the one thing she wants more in the world is to know where she came from when she discovers that 18 years ago, before she was put up for adoption, a young girl was writing letters to her. Contemporaries that deal with deep emotional issues are some of my favorite books to read, so I have a feeling that this one is going to click really well with me. Didn't I like just read a book about a girl whose letters from her adopted parents are a thing, right? Didn't I do that? It really seems to remind me of another book about adoption that I absolutely loved, which is Far From the Tree by Robin Benway, so I'm very excited to pick this one up. So with November, of course, comes Thanksgiving. With Thanksgiving comes Black Friday, and with Black Friday comes Cyber Monday. Now, I wasn't planning on partaking in any of the amazing deals that I saw that weekend until I was in class Monday night and my professor assigned us a book that we were going to have to read during next semester. Whole point is I ended up buying more books than just that one, but they were extremely inexpensive and it was a good deal. So the book I have to read for school next semester is Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria and Other Conversations About Race by Dr. Beverly Daniel Tatum. Next semester in my Master's of Clinical Mental Health Counseling program, we have an entire course dedicated to multicultural counseling, so we have to read this novel in addition to all of our other stories in order to have some class discussions about it. I feel like the way to sum up what I know about this book is this one line from the synopsis that says, "Is the self-segregation a problem to address or a coping strategy we should support?" Despite this being required reading for school, I'm actually very interested in diving in. My goal would be to read this book over winter break so that I don't have to worry about reading it during the semester, but regardless, I will be finishing it in 2020 and I'll definitely share my thoughts on it when I'm done. The next book I picked up in that book outlet Cyber Monday sale is Akata Witch by Nnedi Okorafor. I've had my eye on Akata Witch for a while now, and all I really knew about it is that people had compared it to Harry Potter, so like naturally I'm intrigued. Our main character's name is Sunny, and she is a girl who lives in Nigeria, born in New York City, and though she is West African, she is albino, so she doesn't really seem to fit into any of the boxes people have placed her in. Until she finds out she's got magical abilities, so Sunny begins to get a crash course in magical histories and spells along with some of her friends who also have magical powers when they are recruited to track down a criminal who has powers much greater than themselves. This is the kind of book that gets me fired up at just the thought of reading it. I feel like it's one I'm going to really enjoy, and if you are somebody who has read Akata Witch, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. The next book I bought on Cyber Monday is a book that I read quite a few months ago and absolutely loved but never had a final copy of, so when it was like $3, I was like, this is my time, and it is People Kill People by Ellen Hopkins. This is a story that is sort of half regular novel, half written in verse, and it is all about the topic of gun violence. This book follows 6 different teenagers who all live in the same community, and by the end of this story, one character will shoot a gun and another character will die. This book blew me away. I picked it up like on a total whim, and I cannot get it out of my head. The discussion of gun violence, in my opinion, is so nuanced because with all of these 6 different characters, they have wildly different perspectives on the topic of guns and gun violence in America. I'm talking all sides of the spectrum, with a character who has been disabled by a gun and another character who is a white supremacist and loves guns. Super compelling, lots of topical conversation, and stuff that is so necessary, I feel, to be in the hands of teens today. It is such a powerful book, and I think it is criminally underrated. I feel like I never hear anyone talking about this book, despite Ellen Hopkins being a super successful author. So if anything I've said interests you about it, I'd highly, highly recommend you pick it up, and you'll probably hear me talk about this on my favorites of the year list coming soon. And the last book on that Cyber Monday haul is another memoir that I listened to the audiobook of and just needed to get my hands on a final copy, and that is In the Country We Love, My Family Divided by Diane Guerrero. You may have seen Diane Guerrero on Orange is the New Black and Jane the Virgin, but this memoir really tells the story of what it was like for her to be 14 and have both of her parents, who were undocumented immigrants, deported. I picked this book up pretty randomly because I was just really feeling some type of way about the status of how immigrants are treated in our country, and I really wanted to educate myself more on the topic, and one of the best ways I feel I can always do that is by listening to the stories of people who have actually experienced those hardships. But man, I did not expect to be left completely speechless. This book is so hard to talk about because I get kind of emotional when I think about it. It is just so raw and unflinching, and I'm overwhelmed. You know, in this country, you hear stuff on the news and you think you understand it, but you really don't until you sit down and be quiet and listen. And that's what I did with this book, and it was the most impactful experience. This story is invaluable to me. I feel like there is so much for every single reader who gives it a chance to take away from it. So especially if you're an American, or if you just want to learn more about what it is like for children of undocumented immigrants to exist in this country, I could not recommend this book enough. I'm all kinds of emotional, and I don't know how I'm going to finish this haul. So next, I actually have two copies of the same book, one that I purchased for myself and one that appeared in the mail a couple of days later as a surprise from the novel, and that is Queen of Nothing by Holly Black, which is the third and final installment in the Folk of the Air series. This is the normal copy. This is the Barnes & Noble exclusive edition, and I have been collecting both sets of these books. Number one, because I'm a big fan of the series, and number two, because I mean, just look at that black cover. The Cruel Prince is a pretty hyped book on BookTube. I'm sure you have heard of it, but if you haven't, it follows a girl named Jude who has spent most of her childhood growing up in fairyland after her parents were both murdered by a fairy and he took her and her sisters away to live with him. In this world, fairies are dark, sinister creatures, and Jude has suffered a lot for being immortal, but all she wants is to win a place in the fairy court. So in the first installment of this series, Jude begins spying on one of the princes of the fairy court in order to earn her place as a knight, and the rest of the books thereon have just like an intense political arc and a lot of angsty romance. I love Holly Black, her writing, her plotting, her characters, and especially her interpretation of fairies. She is truly the queen of the fae. Now I'm technically in the middle of Queen of Nothing. Technically, because I've started reading it, but I decided to take a break just because I wasn't picking up any of my books enough and I felt like I just needed a change of pace, so I am going to go back to it at some point. So far I'm liking it and I'm very excited to see how the series ends. Listen, I always try really hard not to say excited and to change around my adjectives, but at this point, I'm just kind of giving up. Next up, I have a sequel that I have been highly anticipating, and that is Children of Virtue and Vengeance by Tomi Adeyemi, which is the sequel to Children of Blood and Bone. I actually got to meet Tomi Adeyemi this past month, which was so exciting because I have tried to meet her like twice since Children of Blood and Bone has come out, and it hasn't worked, but she was so lovely and everything I could have expected. Children of Blood and Bone is a West African inspired fantasy trilogy about a girl named Zelie who lives in a world where magic once lived but has since disappeared, and so the descendants of people who had magic in the past are really ostracized and oppressed by the government. But one day Zelie is given the opportunity to bring magic back to her people, so she must go on a scavenger hunt across the land of Orisha with her brother and a princess who has run away from the castle, while the princess's brother / the prince is hunting them down because he wants to eradicate magic forever. I really loved book one in this series. It was just such a wonderful, rich fantasy story with characters that are super lovable. So I have been dying to read book two, and after this book got pushed back like twice, I am super ready to read it. Next up, I have two books that were sent to me as a lovely little holiday gift from Underlined. So the first is Date Me, Bryson Keller by Kevin Van Wy. Now, I had not heard of this book when I first picked it up out of the box, but I looked at the cover and said, it's gay, I'm in. This book is set to release in May of 2020, and it is giving me the strongest Simon versus Homo sapiens agenda vibes. One of the main characters in this book is named Bryson, and he is like the popular #1 at Fairville Academy, and he has been dared to accept a date from the first person to ask him out on Monday morning every week. But our story starts as a closeted boy named Skye asks Bryson out, who actually says yes. So along their sort of like 5-day relationship, Skye begins to realize that there is much more to Bryson beneath the surface, but he can't stop thinking that falling for a straight boy is a terrible idea. Oh, actually, you know what? It almost sort of seems like a mix between Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda and like To All the Boys I've Loved Before, with this sort of like fake dating, limited relationship type thing. It seems like a recipe for a wonderful book I'm going to love, and one that you might as well. And the other book they sent me is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson, which comes out this February. This book takes place in a town where 5 years prior, a girl was murdered by her boyfriend, who then killed himself. Our main character's name is Pip, and she knew the boyfriend when they were kids, and she just doesn't understand how he could do something like this, so she takes it upon herself to make it her senior project to find out what really happened in this situation. But as she begins investigating and starts to discover that Sal might have been innocent, she seems to have put her own life in danger. I love a good YA thriller, but it also says it is told through journal entries, interview transcripts, and crime documents, which adds another level to the story that I think is going to be very interesting. It doesn't appear like the whole story is told in those formats. There are some normal narrative chapters along the way. I'm always in the market for a new awesome thriller, and this one seems to have a lot of interesting elements to it that are going to make it very unique. The next 2 books on this haul were both gifts that were sent to me by some of you guys, which I'm always so grateful for. I try my very best to thank you all personally when I receive something in the mail, but I seem to have misplaced the note that had the person who sent me this book's name on it. It is 100% in my room because I keep everything I receive in the mail from you guys. There's just a lot of places that it could be. But the book that they sent to me is The Kissing Quotient by Helen Huang. This is an adult romance story about a girl named Stella who has Asperger's and very little dating experience. So Stella does the most reasonable thing that anyone would do in this situation, and she hires an escort. I guess they start developing feelings for one another, bada bing, bada boom, happily ever after. I've definitely been wanting to delve more into some of the adult romance stories out there after I've enjoyed a few in the past, and this is one that has totally been on my list after seeing so many of my booktube friends rave about it, so I'm very excited to read it. Again, I apologize for not having your name at the ready, but thank you so much to the person that sent me this book. It's been one I've had my eye on for a while, and I think I'm going to really enjoy it. And the next book on this list was sent to me by a follower named Gabby, who sent me this book along with a few other goodies, which was very sweet of her, and that is Emma in the Night by Wendy Walker. So thank you so much to Gabby for sending me this book. She said she saw it in a bookstore and picked it up because of the name, which of course makes sense here, so thank you again. This book follows 2 sisters who disappear on the same night, and 3 years later only one of them returns. Cass's story involves kidnapping in an island where the 2 of them were held, but Emma is still missing and Cass's story doesn't add up, so a forensic psychologist starts delving into the history of the family to try and find out what really happened that night. On the back of this book, it's blurbed by Karen Slaughter, who is one of my favorite thriller writers, so anything she says is good is sure to captivate me, and I think I'm going to really enjoy it, so thank you again to Gabby for sending it my way. And we have made it to the final book on this haul, which honestly, I don't know how to start talking about because it's just been a bit of a whirlwind. And that is My Dark Vanessa by Cait Elizabeth Russell, which comes out this January. This is a book I picked up with my friend Monica one day when we were in the city together. She said that she had heard some good things about it and was interested in reading it, so I was like, why not get a copy for myself as well? Normally, I always bring a book with me to the city so that I can read it on the train there and home, but I actually didn't that day because I just didn't want to carry it around. So on the train home, I decided why not start this new book that I just got, and I read 140 pages in one night, which doesn't happen a lot with me. So this book was just really something special. So this book follows a 15-year-old girl named Vanessa who attends an elite boarding school and begins an affair with one of her teachers. Now, for all of her life, Vanessa has believed that this relationship was consensual and like it is the greatest love story of her life, but 17 years later, some allegations have come out about this teacher abusing some of his students. So as an adult, Vanessa is forced to confront her past, some of the trauma that she has suppressed, and reevaluate what this relationship that has shaped her entire life truly means. It is the most evocative, poignant, raw, and unflinching story of grooming and child sexual abuse, and just wow, it was so heart-wrenching. Obviously, the content of this book is super controversial, so I would not be surprised if I start seeing like a ton of bashing reviews for it. But it is just such a powerful story about the power imbalances in our society, the gatekeepers who uphold that, and how survivors are meant to process this trauma and overcome it. I am so obsessed with this book. It completely took me by surprise and became one of my absolute favorite books that I read this year. It's some really heavy, disturbing stuff, so please read with caution, but if it interests you, I think it is such a powerful story, and I would love for more people to experience it. So that concludes my final book haul for 2019. I really hope you guys enjoyed. So many books I've read and enjoyed so far, and so many more I'm excited to dive into. So in the comments below, I would love to hear if you have read any of these books, what your thoughts were, or if you were excited to read any of them as well. But that is it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you soon for a new one. Bye!